Hi BookTube, I'm here with my second video for Canada Reads Selections of 2015. If you don't know, Canada Reads is a competition set up by the CBC where they get 5 well-known Canadians to defend 5 Canadian books. And each person is trying to argue that this is the book that every Canadian should read. The theme of this year's competition is a book to break barriers, and the book that I'll be reviewing today is Intolerable, A Memoir of Extremes by Kamal Al-Solaylee, and this book is going to be defended by Kristen Crook. So a basic summary of Intolerable is, it is about a young man kind of growing up in various countries, Yemen, Egypt, and then they go back to Yemen, and then eventually moves to the UK and settles in Canada. And it's at the same time you see the rise of extremism in the Muslim world, as well as his journey as a gay man. Now I think this should be the second book after When Everything Feels Like the Movies to be voted off, because I found it was really cold, and wasn't very well written, and for lots of reasons that I'm going to talk about. I found that, as I said, it deals a lot with Muslim extremism and a lot of oppression, and Kamal, I found, was very privileged, and he didn't acknowledge that, that he wasn't as oppressed as you would believe for being a young gay man in this time and in these situations, in these areas in the world. And I really felt like he pointed out that his family needed help, but he refused to help them. And I know in the last chapter he kind of, lists the apparent excuses they gave him for not accepting what little help he did actually offer, but it seemed more of an excuse for him trying to justify what he didn't do for his family. I felt he was very selfish, and had a preoccupation with his sexuality that kind of drove a wedge between him and his family. The writing was very cold. Kamal as a character was very cold. I felt no emotional investment in the book, and I didn't really care what happened to him. Whether he stayed in Canada or whether he went back to Yemen, and whether he married a man or a woman, I was just like, I don't really care what happens to you, dude. You're not inviting me in at all. And it seemed more like he was writing an essay on someone else's family as opposed to his own family. Is this a book to break barriers? Maybe. It does address issues of Muslim extremism, especially in regards to women's rights, but he doesn't do this very well. He kind of poo-poos the idea instead of, straight out, opposing it. So, for example, he retells the story of his sister using her niqab, I don't want to call it costume, but the clothing where just the eyes are visible, to pull pranks on people instead of addressing the issues around her having to wear one in the first place, because she didn't always wear one. She started out as a young female in Yemen and Egypt, wearing bikinis and mini skirts and all this, and then all of a sudden to transition to having to wear a full-on niqab. I think the trouble really comes when he tries to bridge two worlds, the Arab world and the Western world, but he really just reinforces that a West is best kind of narrative. He's constantly obsessed with Western culture when he's in the East, in the Arab world, and once he gets there, he's constantly looking back at his family and saying, oh, how backwards they are, and why aren't they adopting their different ways and different fashions and all this stuff. I think he really could have actually benefited from narrowing his theme to either, I really enjoyed the parts where it was talking about the relationship with his mother, or just to discuss his experiences as a gay man in the Arab world or the history of Yemen, instead of trying to address so much in such a very short book. It's under 200 pages. It's exactly 200 pages, actually. you know, I did learn some things that I thought were interesting, but I really felt shortchanged. Like I should have learned a lot more about certain topics that it just kind of glosses over. So that's why I really don't think that it's a book to break barriers, because it's West is best and very superficial. So let me know what you thought about Intolerable, a memoir of extremes, down in the comments below. And remember to keep on reading. Hey, you might want to check out Pickle's Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and other social media links in the description bar underneath.